but I do not want to take care of electricity problems in the universities of Burkina Faso.
Has France left Africa, or does it still think it's the master? It looks like France is not over its golden days that were full of exploitation and bloodshed of Africans. After controlling the locals, the leaders who raised their voices were not safe. Traore, in his recent speech, exposed how France controls the Africans.
That's his job. That's the job of the president. So on the other hand, I reassure you. Oh, what's this? He's going away. Stay there. Maybe he's off to repair the air conditioning.
But will it ever be possible to end France's exploitation of Africa? Can locals do anything? Is Traore also unsafe after the speech? Let's find out. Is Africa truly free from the chains of colonialism? This question reverberates across the continent as nations grapple with the remnants of imperialist domination. In an address, President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso highlighted the enduring exploitation and injustices faced by Africa due to neocolonial forces. His speech underscored the superficial nature of the independence granted in the 1960s, revealing a continued reliance on and manipulation by former colonial powers. How independent is Africa really, 60 years after the end of colonial rule? Traore's speech sheds light on the illusion of independence granted to African nations in the 1960s. According to him, the independence was merely a facade, with former colonial powers installing local valets, or slaves of the salon, to continue serving their interests. These leaders, lacking dignity and morals, have perpetuated the exploitation of their own countries, enriching their former colonizers.
And that was particularly true in Africa. France oversaw territory spanning 17 modern-day nations, from Morocco to the Congo. Under the banner of a civilizing mission, France oversaw brutal occupations that engorged the wealth of the empire and left a terrible legacy for ordinary Africans, marked by slavery, extraction, and murder. And today, France's empire in Africa is still around, in a streamlined, more profitable, and even more exploitative form.
Traore emphasizes that these so-called independent leaders have acted as intermediaries for foreign interests. This arrangement has allowed former colonial powers to maintain control over Africa's vast resources. For instance, Niger's uranium, which powers cities in France and Canada, has done little to alleviate the darkness in Niger itself. Despite being one of the largest producers of uranium, the wealth generated from this resource has not benefited the local population. Similarly, Africa's gold is another stark example of this ongoing exploitation. The continent is rich in precious metals, yet the profits from these resources rarely benefit African nations. Instead, the wealth flows outwards, enriching foreign economies while local communities struggle with inadequate infrastructure and poor living conditions. Traore's description of leaders as local valets highlights their role in facilitating this exploitation, acting as mere servants to their foreign masters. These leaders, often installed and supported by foreign powers, lack the political will to challenge this status quo. Their primary allegiance is to the interests of their former colonizers, and they are rewarded for ensuring that Africa remains a source of cheap resources and labor. Traore's speech is a call to recognize and challenge this illusion of independence. He urges African nations to reject these puppet leaders and demand true sovereignty. By doing so, they can begin to reclaim their resources and use them to benefit their people, rather than enrich foreign powers.
That it's been long ever since we attained our political independence, and therefore we should not blame the white man. Every time, and that's the practice, the evidence shows that every time that Africa has had a good leader, white capital ensures that that good leader is brought down. Look at what happened to Muammar al-Gaddafi. This is somebody who produced the most prosperous nation on earth. And yet, what didn't they tell us? They told us that he's a dictator, They told us that he must be killed like a dog, and they actually went in there and killed him like a dog. What didn't they do to people like Robert Mugabe? What was Robert Mugabe's crime? When all he was asking for was that the land that the whites have stolen from they, the people, should be returned, and for which reason he embarked on a land, reform. Why is a white man hailing Nelson Mandela, for instance? They are hailing Nelson Mandela because when they stole the lands in South Africa, Nelson Mandela said, fine, keep it. Rainbow Nation. So the white man would never praise an African leader that is genuinely committed to serving the people or liberating the people. They would always choose for us heroes who represent their interest and not our interest.
As we consider these harsh truths, it becomes clear that a deeper revolution is necessary to reclaim Africa's fate from these puppet leaders and their foreign masters. So, what kind of revolution does Traore envision for Africa's true independence? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Traore articulates the need for a revolution to overthrow the neocolonial chains binding African nations. He emphasizes the importance of rejecting leaders who serve foreign interests and embracing a new generation committed to true independence.
They are individuals who have no dignity, who have no morals, who have no personality. But the master slave has always known how to identify these individuals. They are always ready to betray their brother to satisfy the master.
The revolution Traore envisions is multifaceted, involving political, economic, and social dimensions. Politically, he calls for the removal of leaders who have been complicit in the exploitation of their own countries. These leaders, described as slaves of the salon, have prioritized their gains and the interests of foreign powers over the welfare of their people. Traore argues that a new generation of leaders, committed to the principles of dignity, sovereignty, and self-reliance, must emerge to replace them. Economically, Traore emphasizes the importance of reclaiming control over Africa's resources. He argues that true independence cannot be achieved as long as African nations remain economically dependent on foreign powers. This means developing local industries, investing in infrastructure, and creating economic policies that prioritize the well-being of the population over foreign interests. By doing so, African nations can break free from the cycle of dependency and exploitation that has characterized their relationship with former colonial powers. Socially, the revolution must involve a shift in mindset among the African people. Traore calls for a rejection of the inferiority complex that has been instilled by centuries of colonialism and neocolonialism. He urges Africans to take pride in their identity and heritage and to resist the cultural domination of foreign powers. This involves promoting African values, traditions, and knowledge systems, and creating a sense of unity and solidarity among African nations. Traore's vision of a revolution is not just about overthrowing the existing power structures, but also about building a new society based on the principles of justice, equality, and self-determination. He emphasizes that this revolution must be driven by the African people themselves, rather than imposed from the outside. It requires a collective effort, with each individual playing a role in the struggle for true independence. The challenges to achieving this revolution are significant. Traore acknowledges that the forces of neocolonialism are powerful and deeply entrenched. However, he believes that the growing awareness and determination among the African people can overcome these obstacles. By uniting in their struggle, African nations can reclaim their sovereignty and build a future that is free from exploitation and oppression. But the question is, how do neocolonial powers maintain their grip on African nations? Traore's speech addresses the relentless attacks faced by African countries, both physical and psychological. He points out the use of mercenaries, disinformation campaigns, and economic pressure to destabilize nations and manipulate public opinion. One of the primary tactics used by neocolonial powers is the deployment of mercenaries. These hired soldiers are often used to create instability and chaos, providing a pretext for foreign intervention. By destabilizing African nations, these powers can justify their presence and influence, maintaining control over the political and economic systems. Traore highlights how this tactic undermines the sovereignty of African nations and perpetuates a cycle of violence and dependency. Disinformation campaigns are another tool in the neocolonial arsenal. These campaigns aim to manipulate public opinion and create divisions within African societies. By spreading false information and promoting narratives that serve foreign interests, these campaigns weaken resistance movements and undermine efforts toward true independence. Traore emphasizes the need for African nations to develop their own media and communication channels to counteract these disinformation efforts and promote a unified vision of independence. Economic pressure is also a significant factor in maintaining neocolonial control. Foreign powers often use economic leverage, such as loans and aid, to impose conditions that benefit their interests. This economic dependency traps African nations in a cycle of debt and subservience, limiting their ability to pursue independent policies. Traore calls for re-evaluating economic relationships and developing self-sufficient economies that are not reliant on foreign aid and investment.
Continue, against all odds, to help the master plunder Africa. They like to say it every year. In their economic polls, Burkina is the poorest country, Mali is the poorest country, Niger is the poorest country. We are ranked among the last. Very well, if we are as poor as they say. But when the time has come to take responsibility, we have asked this master to leave the place. Why don't they want to leave?
In response to these tactics, African nations have developed various resistance strategies. Traore points to the growing awareness among African people of the true nature of neocolonialism. This awareness has led to increased solidarity and cooperation among African nations, as they work together to resist external interference and promote their interests. By building strong regional alliances and fostering a sense of unity, African nations can strengthen their resistance to neocolonial tactics. Additionally, Traore emphasizes the importance of investing in education and raising awareness about the history and mechanisms of neocolonialism. By educating the younger generation about the true nature of their history and the ongoing struggle for independence, African nations can cultivate a new generation of leaders and citizens who are committed to the principles of sovereignty and self-reliance.
Les personnes secourues se trouvent dans une situation d'urgence absolue. Les prévisions météo indiquent une détérioration significative du climat. Pas du tout. Ces violences.
Mais, quel est le député qui vient de prononcer cette phrase? Pardon? Je fais une suspension de séance de 5 minutes.
We know the West always cares about human rights, or at least it looks like it. But why do they ignore African human rights? What does Traore say about the Western rhetoric of democracy and human rights? Traore condemns the hypocritical rhetoric of democracy, freedom, and human rights propagated by former colonial powers. He argues that these values are manipulated to maintain control over African nations. This section will dissect Traore's critique of Western hypocrisy, examining how the supposed promotion of democracy and human rights is often a guise for neocolonial domination. It will also consider alternative models of governance and freedom that truly reflect the aspirations of African people. Western powers often tout their commitment to democracy and human rights as a justification for their involvement in African affairs. However, Traore argues that these values are selectively applied and manipulated to serve neocolonial interests. For instance, democratic processes are supported only when they result in leaders who align with foreign interests. When elections produce leaders who prioritize national sovereignty, they are often undermined through various means, including economic sanctions and covert operations. Human rights rhetoric is similarly employed to justify intervention. Traore points out that concerns about human rights are often raised selectively, focusing on issues that serve to delegitimize governments that resist neocolonial influence. At the same time, human rights abuses by regimes that align with foreign interests are overlooked or downplayed. This selective application of human rights concerns perpetuates a narrative that justifies foreign intervention while ignoring the root causes of injustice and inequality. Traore calls for a re-evaluation of these concepts from an African perspective. He argues that true democracy and freedom cannot be imposed from the outside, but must be rooted in the cultural, social, and historical context of African nations. This involves developing governance models that are participatory and inclusive, reflecting the aspirations and needs of the people. By doing so, African nations can create systems that are genuinely democratic and free, rather than perpetuating the neocolonial status quo. Traore also emphasizes the need for African nations to develop their frameworks for human rights that reflect their unique contexts and challenges. He argues that these frameworks should be based on the principles of justice, equality, and self-determination, rather than being imposed by external actors. By doing so, African nations can create a more just and equitable society that truly respects and upholds the rights of all its citizens. Having explored the rhetorical manipulation by the West, it is essential to look at recent developments that signal a new direction for Africa. So, what recent developments indicate a shift towards genuine African sovereignty? On June 26, 2023, Niger's bold decision to assert its sovereignty marked a significant moment in Africa's struggle for independence. Traore's mention of the African Economic and Security AES architecture, formed on September 16, 2023, is another pivotal development. Niger's decision to assert its sovereignty involved rejecting foreign interference and taking control of its resources. This move was met with aggression from both local collaborators and their foreign backers, highlighting the challenges faced by nations attempting to break free from neocolonial chains. However, it also demonstrated the growing resolve among African nations to reclaim their independence and chart their path. The formation of the AES architecture represents a significant step towards regional cooperation and self-reliance. By focusing on areas such as finance, economy, infrastructure, health, and education, the AES aims to create a comprehensive framework for sustainable development. This initiative reflects a collective effort to address the root causes of dependency and exploitation, providing a foundation for genuine sovereignty. Traore's speech emphasizes the importance of unity and collective action in achieving these goals. He calls for African nations to support each other in their quest for independence, recognizing that the challenges faced by one nation are shared by all. By working together, African nations can build a future that is free from neocolonial domination and reflective of their aspirations and values. Furthermore, Traore's speech highlights the importance of developing strong institutions that can withstand external pressure and interference. He argues that African nations must invest in building robust and accountable institutions that can effectively govern and manage their resources. This includes developing transparent and inclusive political systems, strengthening the rule of law, and promoting good governance. Traore's vision of a new dawn for African sovereignty is not just about reclaiming political and economic control, but also about creating a society that is just, equitable, and reflective of the values and aspirations of the African people. This involves addressing the root causes of inequality and injustice, promoting social and economic development, and ensuring that all citizens have access to basic services and opportunities.
We will no longer allow this. People are awake, and people are fighting today, not for ourselves, but for future generations. And thank you all for the fight.
President Ibrahim Traore's speech offers a stark reminder of the unfinished struggle for African liberation. He exposes the superficial nature of past independence, the betrayal by local leaders, the exploitation of resources, and the need for a revolution against neocolonial forces. Traore's call for unity and vigilance resonates deeply as African nations strive to reclaim their destiny. The journey towards genuine independence is fraught with challenges, but the resilient spirit of the African people continues to drive them forward. As Traore invokes divine guidance and protection, the continent stands at the cusp of a new era, ready to shape its future through collective efforts and unwavering determination. Do you think Traore is the leader who bothers the West so much, Will they also try to shut him? Should he stay more safe? Let us know in the comments section. Will Traore be West's next target? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.